We made it. We finally made it to the end of With Love, Meghan, Season 1, Part 1. I do not want any more of these episodes. I do not want any more useless tutorials on common sense matters. I do not want another crudité. Joy, not perfection. Love is in the details. I don't want to hear it anymore. This series was so vacuous, so dumb, quite frankly. I can't imagine any producer or director who's like legit out there, like working as a career in this field, creating this and putting this out there. I can't imagine any other professional in the realm of TV shows or content creation or anything like that, even lifestyle content, being like, yes, this is a series we would put together. You know what I mean? Like if we were to take Meghan out of the equation and just some rando was like, this is my concept for a show, it would not get picked up because this was just pointless. In the final episode of Part 1, Meghan hosts a brunch party with her conveniently placed as ever goods, the honey, the jam, the terrible dried flowers, the shortbread, and crepes as the season finale, sort of. But it's not really a season finale. It's just the end of Part 1 because Part 2 is coming in the fall. It was a split season. It was all filmed at once. So we just have to clarify because they're trying to do some PR gymnastics to make this seem better than it was, and it wasn't. It was not renewed. They just had all the episodes already ready. But the most prominent thing in episode 8 is the products, which do not have any labels because Meghan did not yet have American Riviera Orchard Montecito, and she had not yet figured out that she was going to have to use As Ever. If you'll recall, that wasn't even her plan A or B. That was like plan C or D. She was trying to come up with other names and finally had to fall back on As Ever because nothing else was getting approved or working out or being received well by the team at Netflix. But the products are there, just without the names, without the packaging, without the label, without the branding. But that kind of explains the rushed and disorganized rollout of the As Ever products coming for sale in micro batches because she and Netflix had agreed that they'd be featured in the show and be for sale by the time episode 8 was out there, or around the same time that episode 8 was out there. So they kind of had to rush getting the products out and up for sale at least close to when the show came out, because otherwise, what's the point? Because they put these products in episode 8. That was like the most important thing of episode 8 was her plugging the products. But she also has Alice Waters come to help with the prep for the party, but not for the party itself, I guess, which was kind of clunky. They could have tried making that sound a little better. But during her time with Alice, it's clear that Alice was another one of the guests that Meghan really wanted approval from. So I guess ultimately it was really only Daniel in episode 1, Mindy, and Chef Ramon that Meghan didn't really care about getting their approval because she was a lot nicer to the other 5 guests, including Alice Waters. But Meghan was on her best behavior because she really wanted Alice to like her, although she did occasionally divert the conversation back to herself in an awkward way or an unnecessary way that lacked flow and wasn't very natural. She can't help herself. She did behave a little better, though, than usual. I wish, because I don't really know much about Alice Waters or her career, but I do know that she was an early adopter of more farm fresh sort of ingredients and was, you know, a famous chef in LA. Like she was a local prominent figure. And so I wish Meghan would have showed us more about Alice and asked Alice more about her experiences or, you know, maybe some of Alice's personal favorite recipes or something like that. But she didn't do a whole lot of that. This episode felt really unorganized, actually. It was as if Meghan didn't really have a plan, and Alice assumed she would be doing whatever Meghan was doing or asking to do. But they decide they're going to make a salad, like a vinaigrette or something like that. So Meghan says to Alice, like, let's go out and get some lettuce from the garden. And she says, I prefer to just grab the lettuce with my hands when picking it from the garden, like Alice does. But just last episode, we saw her using garden shears to get everything. So which is it? The inconsistencies are hard to ignore with Meghan. She has that high in narcissism sort of tendency to just try to mirror whoever she's around if she wants their approval. And it's just noticeable in this sort of a format on camera. And for that reason, putting herself on camera in this way and having so much control over the episodes in this way leaves her really vulnerable to people noticing this type of stuff, like the love bombing tendencies and whatnot. And the inconsistencies, because even just across these 8 episodes, we've seen a lot of inconsistencies in things that Meghan has said, particularly about her childhood or things that she's cooked or stuff like that, or, you know, her history with cooking and gardening and stuff. So it's a little bit risky. But anyway, this is the moment that we get the incredibly out of touch gem that Meghan thinks that you can grow your own food even if you live in a little flat in the city. Well, Meg, I have tried, and we cannot. Either you don't even get enough sun to be able to grow anything or keep anything alive for any significant amount of time, or if you don't have a balcony or a window box, then you don't even have the space. And if you do, then it's too small for it to be substantial enough for most of us city dwellers to actually make and grow our own food in any way, shape, or form. The only option for people who live in city high-rises or flats or places that do not have a yard or a garden is to find a community plot somewhere. And luckily, they're becoming a little bit more popular than I think maybe they used to be. I don't know. I've seen more of them around the city than I previously did years ago. And so you can rent out a community plot and grow your own food there, and you have sunshine and you have a good amount of space where you could actually grow a significant amount of food, you know, if you wanted. But that's like a very small percentage of people that have access to that. So it's incredibly out of touch and foolish for Meghan to say that. It just made her look ridiculous. And in this episode, she contradicts what she said in previous episodes once again, returns to her "I ate so much fast food growing up" version of events. More inconsistencies, you guys. Oftentimes, it's not just in this episode, but across the whole series, when she starts trying to explain something and she realizes at some point that she doesn't know what she's talking about, she just kind of leaves it really vacant and just kind of has this sort of hanging sentence that just fizzles out and is empty of information or detail or fact, because she just clearly doesn't know what she's talking about, so she just kind of gives up after saying a few words. And I guess she thinks that it'll come across like she knows what she's talking about, but it doesn't, because she doesn't actually say anything half the time, or she doesn't say anything important. Like in this episode, she was talking about what she feeds the chickens, and she's like, to get that deep, rich, yellow yolk, I feed them lots of greens. But that doesn't make sense. And she kind of trails off and stops explaining what she's saying. So she's like, I feed them lots of greens, and just, you know, because that's how you get the yellow yolks or the deep yolks. But in reality, to get a more yellow orange, a deeper, richer, darker yolk that's more orangey, which I think is what she meant, leafy greens, yes, but you need to give them foods that have like a bit of an orange color to them and have, it's called carotenoids and xanthophylls. I'm not sure I'm pronouncing the scientific terms properly, but you know, things like carrots, pumpkin, sweet potatoes, marigolds, and yellow flowers, it says you can also do. You can do squash of any kind, and then things like spinach, kale, and collards, really leafy greens. That's what's going to give you a more orange yolk from your chickens, from your hens, because duh. And she doesn't really know what she's talking about, so she just kind of fizzles out her sentence and says nothing really. And what she's trying to say, she actually was wrong about. So it would be better if she actually studied a little bit and knew what she was talking about, or just don't Don't start down the path of claiming to know what you're talking about, you know? Because then you get yourself in a pickle. Next, Meghan's habit of day drinking sort of doesn't work out so great in this episode. She asks Alice if she'd like to have some wine while they cook, and Alice kind of chuckles and is like, oh, don't tempt me. But then Meghan proceeds to go ahead and pour the wine, because Meg needs her wine, probably. And then Alice says, well, it's actually dangerous to drink while you cook, I'd just like to say. And Meg says, don't you think that's part of what makes it more intuitive? And Alice is like, no, it's dangerous. And it is, because you're dealing with sharp knives and hot flames, and you could burn things or forget things in the oven or whatnot. And also just like, if you're less dexterous and you're less focused, mistakes can happen and gross things can happen, like Meghan did in the last episode of putting her slobbered on spoon back in the creamer. But this should have been cut. I don't know why it wasn't cut, but I have been saying this whole series, Meghan should probably not be day drinking all the time in these episodes, because newsflash, not everyone likes day drinking, and not everybody likes drinking, and current health advice is to avoid alcohol altogether. Like, any amount of alcohol is not wise. And so it's maybe not the best thing to thrust upon everyone before noon, and especially when your guest tries to gently, politely say no thanks by being like, oh, don't tempt me. Like, Meghan does not pick up on social cues at all. Then she makes, after Alice is gone, she makes some crepes, and it doesn't go super great. And she makes some shortbread cookies as she prepares for the brunch that she's having, which was meant to celebrate the launch of her business, I think is what they sort of said. Like, and what she said, like, now it's a business at the brunch. But this was summer 2024, so, like, nothing was official yet at that point. So it makes sense why her guests were kind of like, yeah, is it? Is it? Okay. Cheers. But the episode in general was just sort of as bland as and meandering as the rest of the episodes and the rest of the series thus far. The obvious problems plaguing this series that are contributing or causing dismal viewership are clearly the Meg herself coming off as inauthentic, which hasn't helped at any point. But aside from that, it's just the uselessness of it all. And this is what my main concern was when the trailer dropped. If it's not going to be useful, then the audience that usually watches this genre of show will probably not like it. And the small percentage of people who might just have it on for ambiance or like the relaxing visuals anyway, or who are Meghan diehard fans, which is very far and few between, that's not going to be enough viewership to float the whole series. Because the main money in this genre of show, whether it be homemaking and hostessing in general, or lifestyle sort of vibes, or cooking shows, the majority of the money is in people who are interested in the cooking side of it. And that's what allows you to branch out into foods for sale or cookware for sale, which is what she's trying to do. But when you alienate that audience because you're not actually delivering value in the way of like recipes and tutorials that are useful, then you're not going to have enough viewership. And so that was a big mistake and a big missed opportunity. In this specific sort of genre, it feels so incredibly bizarre to not actually provide value. And it's a situation where Meghan clearly mistook the audience or misunderstood the audience, and an audience that thinks this is going to teach them some cool kitchen tricks or new recipes is going to find that they are mistaken once they watch it and not understand the content and be like, oh, well, this isn't for me then. So now that I've endured the whole series, I can say that I have the perspective of its entirety, and it really does feel like some sort of strange version of a reality show. That is what I am left with after finishing the series and then waiting a few days to write this and think about reviewing the series as a whole. It feels like you are looking in at somebody else going about their day. And, you know, we all do things differently, and we all have quirks, and nobody's perfect. And we're all just, you know, trying to try out new things and trying to run a household and whatnot. But the format of the show, it really gave the vibe that you're like looking at somebody who really doesn't know what they are doing, and you're watching them fumble about in this way, and it's weird. And this was sort of my theory at the beginning, at the launch of this show, and when we got the preview, that Meghan, what she really wanted to do with Netflix was to have a reality show a la the Kardashians or someone, where she got followed around and just lived her normal boring ass life. But the Kardashians are the only ones who can get away with having a reality show that is incredibly boring about boring people living boring lives. They're the only ones who can get away with it, okay? It's a one-off, once-in-a-lifetime thing working out. You can't have multiples of this, okay? So the Meg just isn't going to be able to do that. And everybody knew that. So she did not get approval to do a reality show. Probably because of Netflix. But it also could have been that Harry didn't want to do a reality show type thing. But Netflix specifically, I think, would have rejected the idea of a reality show of that sort of a format, because there would have been restrictions on like the kids or filming at home. It would have been a whole thing. And they were probably like, no, we're not going to do that. So this was the next best option. It's a reality show masquerading as a cooking and hostessing show that came off like a dated Instagram or Pinterest. And because it lacked all manner of substance, it was so inescapable. The thought and the obvious fact that this was almost exclusively a vanity project for Meghan. Leave your thoughts in the comments. I am eager to hear what you think. Thank you so much for joining me for today's video, and I will see you next time. Have a happy day, everybody. Bye!